In March 2008, Butch Harmon, one of the most respected swing coaches in professional golf, walked away from John Daly and said something nobody in golf was ready to hear. My whole goal for him was he's got to show me golf is the most important thing in his life, and the most important thing in his life is getting drunk. Daly fired back, said Harmon's comments had destroyed his life, said it was lies, said real men don't behave that way, and most of the golf world sided with Daly. But here's what makes this story worth talking about. Harmon wasn't making it up. He was just the one person in golf willing to say out loud what everyone else had agreed not to. To understand why that quote from Harmon landed the way it did, and why it was more right than wrong, you have to go back to where it all started. August 1991, Crooked Stick Golf Club in Indiana. John Daly wasn't supposed to be there. He was the 9th alternate for the PGA Championship, sitting at home in Tennessee with almost no chance of playing. Then, Nick Price's wife went into labor, Price withdrew, and the remaining alternates ahead of Daly couldn't make it to the course in time. Daly threw his clubs in the car and drove through the night. He arrived after midnight, confirmed his spot in the field, and teed off the next morning without ever playing a practice round on a course he'd never seen. And he won the PGA Championship by 3 shots. He was 25 years old, a rookie, and the most exciting thing golf had seen in years. Jack Nicklaus watched him for the first time and said, "Good gracious, what a coil, what an unleashing of power. I don't know who he reminds me of. I haven't seen anybody who hit the ball that far." He created fans who had never cared about golf before. The blonde mullet, the grip it and rip it style of play, the loud pants, the personality. Daly was the antithesis of the country club game, and people loved him for it. And that love, it turned out, was part of the problem. Because even as Daly was becoming a fan favorite, the record tells a different story. He said himself that he started drinking around age 8. In 2014, he told the Dan Patrick Show that his father was an alcoholic who beat him and his brother without reason. "I've been through hell," he said. By the time he reached the PGA Tour, the pattern was already long established. Between 1989 and 1993, he was hospitalized 4 times for alcohol poisoning. The incidents after the PGA Championship win kept stacking up. Daly had walked off courses mid-round, thrown his scorecard at a scoring tent, been suspended by the tour for 3 months, and checked himself into rehab. He came back, won in 1994, and called it his first sober victory. And then somehow, in 1995, he did something nobody saw coming. The Open Championship at St. Andrews, Daly, reportedly sober, made a 50-foot putt on the final hole to force a playoff with Costantino Rocca, then won in 4 holes. He said afterwards that it was the moment that proved his game, that winning the PGA Championship felt like winning the lottery, but the British Open actually proved that he belonged. This was supposed to be the turning point, but it wasn't. By 1997, he was drinking again. He lost deals with Wilson and Reebok. He checked into the Betty Ford Center. Callaway came in that same year with a $3 million contract that specifically prohibited him from drinking or gambling, which tells you everything about what his reputation already was. They terminated it in 1999 after he refused to enter rehab again. His ranking dropped, his exemptions expired. He went from 2-time major champion to a player who needed sponsor invitations just to get into tournaments. The PGA Tour cited him 11 times for conduct unbecoming a professional. They ordered him to seek counseling or rehab 7 times over his career. He was fined over $100,000 across multiple incidents. And through all of it, golf kept welcoming him back because he sold tickets and because the wild thing narrative was too good to let go of. In December 2007, Butch Harmon agreed to work with him. Harmon had coached Tiger Woods through 8 of his major championships. He'd worked with Greg Norman, Phil Mickelson, Ernie Els, and Dustin Johnson. He knew what elite commitment to the game looked like, and he'd seen it up close for decades. But what he saw with Daly was something different. The specific incident that ended things between them came at the PGA Championship, where Daly wasn't even competing. He showed up anyway, and spent the day at the Hooters hospitality tent, drinking and signing autographs while a tournament was going on around him. Harmon had seen enough. He quit in March 2008 after barely 3 months together, and gave the quote that would define the whole story. Daly's response was immediate and emotional. He said Harmon hadn't even called him first. He said the marketability damage was real. After what Butch said, my marketability went right down. He called it a betrayal, and later told reporters Harmon had since apologized. Harmon shut that down immediately. He confirmed he had called Daly and made clear he had not retracted anything he said. He asked me if I would go on the Golf Channel and make a retraction for my statements. And I said, absolutely not. He told Daly directly that the only person to blame for his shortcomings was himself. The golf world mostly heard Daly's version, as they usually did. Then came October 26, 2008, 7 months after Harmon's quote. Police responded to a medical call outside a Hooters restaurant. They arrived to find John Daly outside, unconscious. He was described by officers as extremely intoxicated and uncooperative, refusing to be taken to hospital. He was placed in protective custody and held for 24 hours at the Forsyth County Detention Center until he was sober. He wasn't charged with a crime, but the police released his mugshot, and it went everywhere. Then in December, the PGA Tour suspended him for 6 months and fined him $10,000. He was required to attend inpatient alcohol treatment. Shortly after, Daly committed publicly to stop drinking, and this time, it was more lasting. He confirmed his sobriety at the Open in July 2010. It's worth sitting with the timeline for a moment. March 2008, Harmon says the most important thing in Daly's life is getting drunk. October 2008, Daly is found unconscious outside a Hooters. Whatever you thought of how Harmon said it, the record had just confirmed what he meant. And this is where the story becomes about more than just two men. Because Daly himself, in later years, gave a clearer picture of what those years actually looked like. In a 2016 interview with Graham Bensinger, he said that wherever he broke course records, he'd done it barefoot and drunk. He said there were times on tour, not casual rounds, but proper tour events, where he didn't sober up until the 13th or 14th hole. He said he'd had nights that went until 7 a.m. with a tee time at 8. Between 1991 and 2007, he estimated he'd lost somewhere between $55 and $57 million gambling, a figure that shocked even him when he went through his tax records. He thought it was around 20 to 25 million. The thing is, the golf world knew, not every specific detail, but they knew enough. The hospitalizations, the suspensions, the rehab stints, none of that was hidden. It was documented. And year after year, the response from the sport was another sponsor exemption, another comeback narrative, another crowd roaring when he stepped onto the first tee. Nobody wanted to be the one to say what Harmon finally said. Because saying it meant disrupting something, the sport had decided it needed the myth of the lovable rogue, the people's champion who played golf the way regular people wished they could. Harmon wasn't interested in the myth. He wanted to know if golf was the most important thing in his client's life, and he concluded it wasn't. John Daly is still here. He got sober. He competes on the PGA Tour Champions. In 2021, he and his son won the PNC Championship together, one of the warmer images in recent golf memory. Butch Harmon never apologized. He never had to. None of this is about a man who deserved to fail. Daly grew up with an alcoholic father who beat him. He carried that into his adult life and fought it, publicly and painfully, for decades. Addiction is a disease after all. But Harmon wasn't attacking him. He was refusing to look the other way, like the rest of golf did. The sport had spent years treating the drinking as part of the brand, the chaos as part of the charm. Harmon stripped all of that away and said what he actually saw. The golf world didn't want to hear it, then watched him be proven right 7 months later outside a Hooters. And that's the question this story leaves you with. Not whether Butch Harmon was wrong, but why it took so long for anyone to say it, and what it might have meant for John Daly if someone had said it years earlier.